for a brand new show. Scooby Doo is here again, away we go.
Scooby Doo is running from a spooky ghost.
Shaggy isn't doing what he does the most. Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby Doo.
Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby Doo. That's my pal. Scooby Dooby Doo.
Hello, Scooby Doo fans! Welcome to my Season 3, Episode 4 review of the Scooby Doo Show. So last time I continued my 2025 summer special with a review of Season 3, Episode 3 of the Scooby Doo Show. I hope you guys enjoyed that. But of course today, I'll be covering Season 3, Episode 4 of the Scooby Doo Show, titled To Switch a Witch, which was released on September 30th, 1978. The short synopsis of the episode is, the gang travels to Salem to visit a friend, Arlene Wilcox, on Halloween night. However, the town is being haunted by a witch, and the townsfolk suspect Arlene, who is a descendant of the witch in question, and they set out to get a confession from her. So as per usual, I'll be watching Season 3, Episode 4 of the Scooby Doo Show on the Scooby Doo Wario, the complete series box set. This box set has both seasons of Scooby Doo Wario, as well as the third season of the Scooby Doo Show. As I mentioned in my previous videos, basically, Hanna-Barbera and Warner Brothers like to falsely advertise the third season of the Scooby Doo Show as a fake third season to Scooby Doo Wario. But as I've established many times on this channel, there was no third season of Scooby Doo Wario. Scooby Doo Where Are You lasted 2 seasons. The Scooby Doo Show had 3 seasons. Now, as far as this episode's reception is concerned, I believe fans like this episode. At least I heard most fans like this episode from what I understand. I'm not too sure about that because the Scooby Doo Show doesn't get a lot of discussion. But from what I gathered, I believe this episode is well liked. So there's really only one way to find out whether I agree with that consensus and consider it to be a good episode, or if I consider it average and in the middle, or if I'm one of the people who thinks it's a bad and terrible episode. So let's find out, shall we? So let's take a look at the episode to see whether I think it is a good or bad episode of the Scooby Doo Show. The episode begins with it being Halloween in Salem. An old caretaker is digging graves in a cemetery when suddenly a glowing witch appears, clad in a purple robe and green wig. The caretaker runs off screaming that she's back. He arrives at the house of Squire Marley, one of the town's leaders, claiming the old witch of Salem, Melissa Wilcox, has risen from her grave to seek revenge after being burned at the stake over 200 years ago. The gang are on their way to Salem to see an old friend, Arlene Wilcox, who has just inherited her family's house. When they arrive, they see Squire Marley nailing the witch's sign to one of the trees. He warns them to leave, saying that Arlene has been possessed by the witch of Salem. The gang ignores his warnings and goes inside Arlene's house to find out what's going on. She tells them that Squire Marley saw the witch and claims she looked exactly like Arlene, knowing that Arlene is a direct descendant of Melissa Wilcox. After being shown the rooms, Shaggy and Scooby dress up in their Halloween costumes, with Shaggy dressing up as a peasant and Scooby dressed up like the witch, looking very similar to Melissa Wilcox's witch. It is there that they first encounter the witch, who appears in their room. Before they can call for help, the witch disappears in a cloud of green smoke. Fred, Daphne, and Velma, as well as Arlene, rush upstairs to find a terrified Shaggy and Scooby. Daphne notices a strange liquid on the ground that is eating away at the carpet. As they look out the window, they see the witch running back to the graveyard. They pursue her, leaving Arlene alone at the house. The gang arrives at the graveyard just to see the witch run to her grave and disappear in another cloud of smoke. Velma goes behind the grave and finds a hot piece of wire, a clue to the mystery. After being warned again, this time by Gar Mooney, the caretaker, the gang heads to the Salem Witchcraft Museum to look through old records. There they find the Wilcox family tree, where Arlene's name is marked out and replaced by the word Gemini. Shaggy says maybe Gemini is Arlene's birth sign, making a joke about him being born under a hospital sign himself. Velma tells Shaggy, though, that Arlene can't be a Gemini because Geminis are born in the spring, and Arlene's birthday is in October. Fred realizes that Gemini is actually a clue, and Velma agrees with this, as well as the ink blots being a clue as well. The gang decide to split up, with Fred, Daphne, and Velma going back to Arlene's house, while Shaggy and Scooby go out trick-or-treating. While they're out trick-or-treating, Scooby is mistaken for Melissa Wilcox and is taken by Squire Marley and the town mob back to the Witchcraft Museum for an old-fashioned confession, basically by repeatedly dunking him under the water. Fred, Daphne, and Velma find the Wilcox house deserted and head to the graveyard, where they find Arlene. Arlene had escaped the mob after being warned by Gar Mooney, which, by the way, Arlene completely ignored Fred's directions of not opening the door to anybody and immediately opened the door to Gar Mooney. Shaggy then arrives after escaping the confession unseen, and the gang heads to the museum to rescue Scooby. One odd thing is that when Shaggy's captured, it's established that he's able to get his arm out because he points at Scooby and says he's not a witch, he's a dog. Which, if he could do that, why the hell didn't he escape before? And why is all of a sudden when Shaggy's at the graveyard, he has no shoes on, but as soon as they go back to the museum, he has shoes on again? Where the hell did his shoes go? They are successful, however the mob begins chasing them, thinking that they're the witch's assistants. The gang goes back to the graveyard to dig a hole to trap the witch in. Shaggy and Scooby foil the plan accidentally, but the witch falls into another hole, trapping herself. Squire Marley arrives just as the gang reveals what has been happening. The witch turns out to be Arlene's long-lost, unnamed twin sister, who Arlene had never met or known about. So we have no idea who this twin sister is. It's not even, we don't know her name at all. We don't even know if she actually is Arlene's twin sister. Like, we don't know the circumstances. We don't know if this actually is her twin sister. We don't know if this is someone faking to be her twin sister, and her twin sister still is out there. We don't know her real name. Or if she never had a twin sister to begin with and someone just made that up. I don't know, but we never find out Arlene's twin sister's name. Fred and Velma inform Arlene that they discovered her secret. They found a reference to Gemini, meaning twins, in the Wilcox family record, proving that she had a twin. Fred explained that her sister's name had been carefully erased. This twin had hatched a plan by disguising as the witch to scare Arlene out of town, steal her inheritance, and claim her estate all for herself. Fred also reveals that Gar Mooney had been aiding her sister, but Marley had been captured before he could escape. The wire Velma found near the grave was part of a setup Mooney had created to make the witch appear to glow, and additionally, the acid on Arlene's carpet originated from a battery constructed using wiring. Marley apologizes to the gang and Arlene about what happened earlier and escorts the phony witch and Gar Mooney to jail for their crimes. By the way, he's very lucky that him and the rest of the townsfolk are not being charged for attempted murder, because they literally almost murdered innocent teens and an innocent talking dog just based on their fears and the assumption that Arlene was a witch and that they were helping Arlene as a witch. So the gang, they're lucky the gang are nice, good Samaritans, because if this was anybody else, they probably would be charged for their vigilantism, because that would not fly by anybody else's standards. But I'm assuming the gang are nice enough to let it go. But definitely, like, they're very lucky they did not catch those charges. Because honestly, they could be tried themselves for literally almost murdering Scooby and Arlene, as well as the rest of the gang, just based on the fear that she might happen to be a witch. Later, back at Arlene's place, she thanks everyone for their help in solving the mystery, especially Shaggy and Scooby for saving her. Fred wonders where Shaggy and Scooby are. Shaggy is seen giving Scooby some chicken soup because he got the sniffles from being dunked so many times, only with the chicken still left in it. And the episode ends with Scooby trying to say his famous catchphrase, only to end up sneezing.
I can't thank you enough for all your help, especially Shaggy and Scooby.
Say, where are those two?
Like all those dunkings gave Scoob the sniffles, so I'm giving him some chicken soup.
Soup? Mmm.
Like I guess I forgot to take out the chicken, Scoob.
Scooby.
I'm going to give Season 3, Episode 4, The Scooby Doo Show, 2 stars out of 5. Yeah, this wasn't really a great episode. It was quite the disappointment, actually. It had a lot of potential to be a good episode. The villain had a lot of potential. The idea of Halloween in Salem, Massachusetts had potential. Like, a lot of potential here, but I just kind of feel like it was wasted. And for me personally, I don't understand what people see in this episode. I mean, maybe I've only heard the minority of opinions. I'm not too sure. But from what little I gathered, people seem to like this episode. I can't really see... I don't really know what they see in this episode, because this episode is just not that great of an episode. Like, in fact, it's lucky it's not even a 1-star episode, because, like, there were a lot of bad elements to it. It just happened to be saved by, like, one or, like, a small few things that, you know, hoisted it up a little bit. But it was a very disappointing below-average episode, because, you know, you had a great setting in Salem, Massachusetts. You had the great potential for the villain, and it just wasn't executed to its full potential. So, yeah, before I get into my negatives for the episode and what I didn't like about the episode, I'll first get into my positives for the episode and what I did actually like about the episode. So, starting with the positives, my first one is I think Fred was a good leader in this episode. He told everyone where they needed to go, what to do next. He fulfilled his basic role of being a leader. I feel like he also helped Velma piece together the clues to help solve the mystery. I felt both him and Velma kind of had a bit of a duality in that role. Like, they shared that role in this episode. So I felt overall Fred did a good job. He fulfilled his basic role as a leader, and he, along with Velma, helped piece together the clues to help solve the mystery. Then we have Velma. Velma also helped piece together the clues to help solve the mystery, just like I said, and she fulfilled her basic role in this episode, so she was good. And I felt her and Fred found, you know, all the clues of the episode, so I felt overall her and Fred, you know, did pretty good. They fulfilled their basic roles, and they helped find a couple of the clues of the episode. I thought there were a good number of suspects in the episode. So you had 2 suspects in the episode. You had Gar Mooney, who was the cemetery the cemetery caretaker. And you have Squire Marley. So it was kind of a 50-50, you know, of who it could be. I don't really consider Arlene Wilcox to be a suspect. You know, she definitely is, because one, she's a friend of the gang's. But also, it'd be way too obvious for her to be the villain. So, yeah, it was either going to be Gar Mooney or Squire Marley. Gar Mooney does end up being one of the villains, just not the costumed villain. He ends up being like a secondary outside of costume villain. So, yeah, overall, I thought there was a good number of suspects. It was a nice 50-50 of who it could be. I thought the atmosphere of the episode was really good. You know, so I did feel tension and suspense from the atmosphere. But it wasn't because of the villains or the setting. It was because of the mob. The mob mainly created a lot of the atmosphere of this episode because of their, you know, fear of there being a potential ghost witch on the loose, and them thinking that, you know, a ghost witch has possessed Arlene Wilcox, and made her into a witch. You know, the fear kind of drives them to do reckless and dangerous things to the point where they almost hurt Scooby, Arlene, and even the rest of the gang as well. So you do fear for the gang's safety because you're not sure how far this mob is going to take their actions. How far is their fear going to drive them? Are they going to cross the line that they can't, you know, uncross? But you're also wondering what's going to happen next, because you're kind of like anticipating, like, where's the mob? Like, you know, you have to keep an eye out for them because, like, you know, while the gang's trying to do their investigation and trying to find out what's going on with the witch, you have to keep an eye out on where the mob is, because at any point they could come and they could capture the gang and do potentially hurtful and dangerous things towards them. So yeah, the atmosphere was good, but not because of the villain or the setting. It was mainly from the mob. So at least they had that going for them. But it is a shame that the villain or the setting didn't contribute to it. But the mob did create some good tension and suspense in the atmosphere. So I thought the atmosphere was really good in this episode. And my final positive is I found the setting of the episode to be good as well. So the main setting of the episode is, of course, Salem, Massachusetts. Now, I like the setting because, well, it fits the villain well, for one, because it's a witch. But I think it's because of my bias that because I'm a New Englander, I naturally love good old school New England type of settings. So it really is a great kind of setting because as a New Englander myself, I love those good old school New England vibes. And this episode kind of provides that. Salem, Massachusetts really is represented quite well. It's a good, New England type of setting. It has a lot of cool history to it. Now, I will say, though, I don't know what the point was for making this episode take place on Halloween. Because at no point in the episode, besides Shaggy and Scooby trick-or-treating, at no point is it indicated that there's any sort of Halloween vibes going on in Salem, which is weird. There's no Halloween decorations. There's no people out dressed up on Halloween. So, like, it kind of feels like the Halloween bit was, like, last minute and Hanna-Barbera just threw that on there, like, for no reason. Like, there really was no point to making the episode take place on Halloween. It honestly could have not taken place on Halloween, and the episode wouldn't have changed at all. So I don't know what the point was for making that a plot point for the episode. Because there was no sort of Halloween atmosphere in this episode, or Halloween vibes in this episode. And I say the only reason it probably was used was for Scooby to be confused as the witch. Which, if that's the case, if you're going to go on, commit to that plot point, at least try to make it feel like Halloween. Make it feel like these people are actually celebrating Halloween. Like, there's decorations up and people are out trick-or-treating. Like, they really don't give off the vibe that this is Halloween in Salem. This honestly could have been any other day in Salem, Massachusetts, and it wouldn't have changed at all. It kind of just feels like an unnecessary plot point that was used to have Scooby be, mistaken for the witch. That's what I believe the case to be, is why they, created that plot point. Because otherwise, it's just a useless plot point. I don't understand that. And it has such great potential, because Halloween in a place like Salem, Massachusetts, that's a neat idea. But why not take it to its full, execution, its full conclusion? Make it feel like Halloween in Salem. Instead, they don't even bother, so... Yeah, well, I like the setting because I'm a New Englander and I love good old school New England vibes. And I love, I just love these kinds of settings. So it's kind of a little bit of my bias, but also because I do think, it ties into the villain well. And, Salem itself has great history. So, yeah, that's really what makes this setting good for me. But for me, I don't understand what the point of making it Halloween in Salem was. I feel like that was an unnecessary plot point that was only used to give Scooby a costume to mistake him as the witch. Which, to me, if you're going to do that, commit to it. Like, don't just, have it be a throwaway thing that you don't even bother executing it to its full potential. So... yeah, that's all I got for positives, so I think it's about time to get on to the negatives of the episode and what I really didn't like about the episode. So, starting with the negatives, my first one is I think Daphne, Shaggy, and Scooby are all weak in this episode. Daphne didn't really do anything in this episode. She wasn't really much of a leader, didn't find any clues, didn't really help piece together the clues to help solve the mystery, wasn't funny or cowardly, so yeah, Daphne didn't really do it for me. Once again, Shaggy's weak in this episode for the second episode in a row, which I hate. But now Scooby's weak as well in this episode, which sucks. Like, both Shaggy and Scooby don't even fulfill their basic roles in this episode. Like, Shaggy and Scooby don't feel like they're funny or cowardly in this episode. They don't feel like there's not really a lot of humor to them. They don't really have many humorous moments in this episode. And they're not really that cowardly, and I think that's because they're focused on the trick-or-treating aspect and the Halloween aspect, so they kind of don't really have that cowardice either, at least not for me. They don't really convey their normal roles, and they don't really help capture the villain or find any clues or anything. Like, Shaggy and Scooby overall just felt like they really didn't do anything in this episode. They just felt like a complete waste, and that's a shame because Shaggy and Scooby are my favorite characters of the gang, and they should be the easiest to achieve, but for some reason in this episode, they just really didn't do it for me. They were weak. Then we have the villain of the episode, who I thought was weak as well. So the main villain of the episode is, of course, the Ghost Witch of Old Salem. The Ghost Witch of Old Salem is weak mainly due to the lack of screen time from her and impact being taken up by the mob, essentially. So while the Ghost Witch of Old Salem has a neat design, and I really love her design, and she certainly had the potential to be a great villain, I feel like she was a wasted villain and that, you know, wasn't used to her full potential, mainly because a lot of the screen time and scare factor and impact of the episode was taken up by the mob. The mob were the more villainous threats of the episode than the villain herself, which is odd to me because the main villain should be the focus and the main threat of the episode, not this not this mob on the side. The mob definitely took away from the Ghost Witch of Old Salem, and it made it feel like they should have been the main villains more than this witch, because this witch barely did anything at all. Like, she was so weak in this episode, she wasn't that scary, she didn't do many things that were that scary. She wasn't fun or entertaining to watch, she just felt like she was a nothing villain that had barely any screen time, that was mostly taken up by this mob, who felt like the real threats and the real villains of the episode. So yeah, while I like the design of the Ghost Witch of Old Salem, I feel like they just wasted her. Like, I feel like they didn't take full advantage of her, and instead they just gave it to the mob, which was so stupid to me. Like, while the mob idea is nice in theory, I feel like they took away from the villain, and they became more of the main threats than the Ghost Witch of Old Salem. So yeah, the villain was weak, not because she didn't have potential or you know, she wasn't scary or anything. Like, she had potential to be really scary and fun and entertaining because her design was certainly great. It's just they didn't really give her the attention she deserved and gave more of the focus to the mob, which took away from her as a villain. Outside of costume, I found Arlene's unnamed long-lost twin sister, as well as Gar Mooney, to be very uninteresting. So, we never see Arlene's, you know, unnamed twin sister. We don't know who she is. We never see her before that point. We don't even know if she actually is Arlene's twin sister. She could just be a fake for all I know. We don't know anything about this woman. We don't even see her actual face. They don't even take the makeup off of her or the getup, so we have no idea who this character is. And Gar Mooney, he just doesn't really do anything. Like, he really doesn't impact much. Like, Squire Marley did a lot more than him. Like, because he was the one heading the mob. Whereas Gar Mooney just kind of didn't really do much. He didn't really stand out in any way. He didn't really tell the backstory of the witch, like I think Squire Marley did. I mean, he told a little bit from what I remember, but, you know, I don't think he didn't like give a full exposition about it to the gang. I think like Squire Marley more so did that, and Squire Marley overall had a more bigger impact than Gar Mooney did. So yeah, Gar Mooney was a very uninteresting character outside of costume. He didn't really stand out in any way. He was quite uninteresting and boring. I found the motive of the villains to be weak as well. So the motive for Arlene's unnamed twin sister, as well as Gar Mooney, is that they essentially wanted to scare Arlene away so that they could basically steal her family inheritance and her family estate. Now, this is nothing new. This is basically a land and money motive, but a very boring and generic one. We've seen a family inheritance type of motive before. That's not really anything new. I think a family estate is kind of new. You know, we've gone through a lot of episodes, so I can't be too sure, but I believe that's somewhat new. But even then, like, this kind of just feels like a boring land and money motive. Like, there's not much flavor to it, not much to make it stand out in any way. It just kind of feels like, yeah, it's a nothing motive for me. Like, it isn't that, you know, amazing or creative. It's a pretty boring and generic motive that we've seen before. Like, we've had family inheritance, you know, motives before. You know, it's basically like a generic money land motive. So yeah, weak motive, wasn't really creative or interesting in any way. It was pretty weak across the board. I found there to be really no mystery in this episode. I didn't really get the sense that there was any sort of mystery in this episode. There wasn't any questions I was asking throughout this episode, like wondering what was going on with any particular thing. And, you know, the answers we do get for the motive and who's behind it are really uninteresting and boring. But yeah, there's not really anything I'm questioning throughout the episode. I'm not really questioning the witch's history because we know it. You know, we know who it is, and I'm not really questioning anything else. So it ends up just being a very, you know, there's just really no mystery at all in this episode for me. I think it's more so the gang are just trying to help their friend out and clear their friend's name. I really think that's really the main focus for the episode. I think they're just being good Samaritans who care about their friend and don't want to see her get falsely hurt or falsely accused of something that she didn't do, and so are basically trying to clear her name. That's really it. It just doesn't really feel like much of a mystery at all in this episode. And my final negative is I found the clues of the episode to be very weak as well. So the clues that we get in this episode are the battery acid, the wire, the witch symbol on Melissa Wilcox's grave, as well as in the library, you know, the Witchcraft Museum, the book that Velma finds. As well as the Wilcox family tree book with Gemini written on it and the ink blots. Now, none of these clues point towards a suspect or a motive. Like, the closest I get is with the Gemini and the ink blots, but unless if you're familiar with that term, like Gemini being a twin, you're not automatically going to assume that that means twin. It's mostly, mostly Gemini is a word associated with, astronomy or signs, like a birth sign, not so much like the basis for like a name for, twins. And while the ink blots are a bit suspicious, like, it doesn't really prove anything. Like, we don't know what's hiding under there. For all we know, it could be useless. Like, it might not even matter. But yeah, like, none of the clues really point towards any of the suspects in the episode. They don't point towards Scar Mooney or Squire Marley. They don't really point towards the motive either. All they really do is just explain how the effects were achieved, which is cool, but that's what I expect in the episode. I expect to be informed on how these effects were achieved. My main thing I'm looking for with clues is, does this narrow down the list of suspects, or does it help point towards a motive in the episode? And the clues do neither of these. So for me, the clues are weak across the board. They don't really answer anything at all. All they do is just explain the basics, but that's to be expected. Like, I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for either to narrow down the list of suspects or to point towards a motive, and the clues did none of that. So, yeah, they were quite weak in this episode. Overall, guys, I would personally not recommend this episode to fans and newcomers of the show. It's quite a shame because this is such a disappointing below-average episode. This episode had quite the potential to be a good episode, but it was squandered. A lot of the aspects were squandered, and they just did not take full advantage of certain aspects of the episode. This episode was mainly saved by the setting of Salem, Massachusetts, and the atmosphere created by the mob. If it was not for these two things, this episode would easily be one of the worst of the series and one of the worst of season 3. Thankfully, it's not, but it's still a pretty weak episode and a pretty, one of the more bad episodes, one of the more poor episodes of the series. So, yeah, I wouldn't recommend you give this one a watch. It's not that great, and you could easily skip this one. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Please give a like if you did. Comment down below your thoughts on the episode. Do you like this episode? Do you think I'm being too harsh on it? Are there things that you see that I don't see? Do you hate this episode? I'd be interested in that as well. Like, do you agree with me? Do you think this is like a bad episode, like a disappointing below average episode, or it's even worse than what I make it out to be? Or are you somewhere in the middle where you think it's okay and decent and average, but it's not good or bad? I'm curious for your thoughts, so let me know. And subscribe for more Scooby Doo content like this, or if you're just interested in any of my other content. Obviously, I'll have more Scooby Doo reviews on the way. both, we range from like TV show episodes to movies to video games to books. We cover all things Scooby on this channel. So if you're a diehard Scooby Doo fan, a newcomer to the Scooby Doo franchise, whatever side of the fence you're on, if you love all things Scooby Doo and you want to join in on discussions on individual Scooby Doo episodes and movies and video games and books, then come join the channel and experience some amazing Scooby Doo content. In my next video, I'll continue my 2025 summer special with a review of Season 3, Episode 5 of the Scooby Doo Show, titled The Tar Monster. So yeah, this is the episode about the famous Tar Monster, one of Scooby-Doo's more famous foes. So this will definitely be interesting to go back to. The Tar Monster is an iconic Scooby-Doo foe, so we'll see if he lives up to the expectations Scooby-Doo fans have set for him. I haven't seen this episode in quite a while, so I'm decently curious to see if it lives up to the hype and if the Tar Monster is worthy of the recognition he gets, or if he's another villain that is overhyped and overrated. But I guess we'll see. So, if you want to know my thoughts on Season 3, Episode 5 of the Scooby Doo Show, The Tar Monster, then come join me next time. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, peace out.
Again, away we go.
Scooby Doo is running from a spooky ghost.
Shaggy isn't doing what he does the most. Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby Doo.
Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby Doo. That's my pal. Scooby Dooby Doo.